Okay, you guys, welcome to day 3. Today we're going to be working on the prompts for if-else. One thing to note, you guys have new pairs for today that are posted on the board. So when we break the pair, make sure you go to the whiteboard, find your new pair. Everyone should be feeling set up to use Sublime and Fluebit. Can I get thumbs in the chat? Is that the case? Everyone's feeling good to go with Fluebit? Anyone pee down that they have not? Great. If you are, thumbs down. If you just have some quirky thing you want to test out, just after the lecture, hang back and we'll make sure that you're good to go. Or since there's so many Bs, more than likely your pair will already be like a Fluebit Pro and we'll be able to walk you through it. Other than DevOps issues, any lingering questions from yesterday's prompts? The stuff we did, JavaScript in the DOM. You can just unmute and ask if you have a question about yesterday's stuff.
I have a question about the DOM.
Yeah, the DOM. Go ahead.
I'm just curious. What's a good perspective on it? I don't think I grasp exactly the point of the document function.
Good question. So when you're writing code, you are writing in this scripting language called HTML. You're putting in like H1 tag to say, like, I want a header here, and P tag, like, I want a paragraph here. But every browser, just like every browser, Chrome, Safari, Opera, Firefox, is going to implement JavaScript a little differently. They're going to take your JavaScript code and they're going to put it through their sort of JavaScript engine. Their standards for how it's implemented, which are set by ECMA, which is like a sort of a European standards making body that says, hey, if you're going to call it JavaScript, you have to implement these functions, but they don't say how they have to be implemented. That's up to every browser, sort of how it gets implemented. That's sort of the case with the HTML. What happens is the browser is going to grab your HTML, but it's going to change it into how it's going to work with it. And it's going to take your HTML structure, how you've written out a page, and turn it into what's called the document object model, or DOM, which is what we call it. It is pretty much your HTML, but it's in this tree-like structure, which was kind of drawn out for you in the picture there, where it starts with a body, document body, which is like everything that you've written. And then every tag that you have, so you have a paragraph tag, and inside that paragraph, you have listed kind of subordinately, like an unordered list with list elements. The DOM takes that and imagines it in this sort of data structure, which is a tree. And the reason that it does that is just so that the browser can manipulate it. So when you are typing JavaScript in your Chrome console and you add an element, say, or you select an element and you change its text content, it appears differently on the page because you are altering the DOM, but you are not altering the actual HTML. Like if you go back to Sublime and look at your HTML page, there's no new like paragraph tag or there's no new text content, even though you've changed it with JavaScript as you've been typing. It's not actually altering the HTML. What it is altering is the DOM. Does that help at all, or?
It does. It sounds like the document object model is the data is the object that every browser gets, and it's unchanging from every browser. And then as it passes through your browser, it's the interpretation of the script, but the DOM itself is just the original material.
Yeah,
the document is the original material.
Yeah, like the HTML code is like the original source. Like that's like the source. The DOM is like a representation of that is going to allow itself to be manipulated by JavaScript. So all of a sudden the DOM could have like a new, like today we're going to actually, and tomorrow when we get into jQuery, we will actually be adding things to the DOM. Like you'll just type some JavaScript in that says, hey, I want to create a new H2 tag right here in the middle. And you'll create it, you'll append it, and on your page, you'll suddenly see this brand new H2 tag. And if you open up your Chrome console and inspect the elements, you'll see in the console, which is actually a representation of the DOM, there'll be an H2 tag written in there. But if you flip back to your Sublime and look at your HTML, it won't be. There won't be any new tags in your actual HTML. But the browser will act as if there is. The DOM will have this new element in it. Any other questions?
I have one about the prompt message that we were supposed to get yesterday in one of the exercises. So
Yeah.
the stuff that we did inside the console, inside either Atom or Sublime, it's not supposed to show us the prompts or alerts because it's not an actual web browser, correct?
Exactly. So this,
Okay.
what we set up in Sublime was like that node build system.
Mhm.
And Node doesn't have the browser or the document method.
Okay, cool. Because that was throwing me off. I thought I was doing something wrong, and then I ended up figuring it out.
Yeah. Those are just a few of the methods that only browsers have implemented. Node does not implement it. Okay, there's one quick thing. Any other questions? There's one quick demo I want to do here before we jump into some of the material for today. Oh wait, was somebody unmuting with a question? Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So one thing that, oops, not this either. Okay, what's going on? Oh, as we were just working through this prompt yesterday, I was in with the group and they were just wondering a little bit about like, what is this document query selector doing? Like it's not giving them what they expected, that we thought we should get all of the paragraph tags, but it wasn't, it was just giving them one. In JavaScript, there's constantly quirks or like methods that maybe you use occasionally, but you don't use them all the time and you're trying to remember exactly what they return or exactly how to use them. This is where Google is definitely your friend. But getting used to doing some good Googling is a really good skill to have. So it's just a demo, typing that in. We were wondering like, what is query selector? I like to just go to Google, start by typing in JavaScript. Oh look, it's still there from yesterday. JS, query selector, for instance. And typically some of the first results you're going to get back are from two really awesome websites. The first one that is, I think the best one is MDN, Mozilla Developer Network. Remember, Mozilla came out of the ashes of Netscape. The developers from Netscape developed Mozilla, and Brandon Ike was working at Netscape in 1995 when he wrote JavaScript. So they have like a great documentation of how JavaScript is used. So if we click on this one, it brings us to their MDN page, where it's going to walk us through, possibly in further depth than we want or need, exactly what it does. Element is an element object. Gives you a great summary. Returns the first element within the document using depth first pre-order traversal that matches the specified group of selectors. So as we page through this, lots of examples, really awesome, just like amazing documentation. As you explore new libraries in JavaScript, you'll come to just wish that all libraries did their documentation like as amazingly as MDN does. They'll have more suggestions for you, code snippets, query selector. Oh, maybe that's what we really wanted. Okay, this returns all elements descended. So this would be one of like the top spots to look, is to go to MDN and see what kind of results you get. The second page that's almost always going to come up in a JavaScript search. I thought it would go right back there. Let's search for that same thing, JavaScript query selector. Is this website called Stack Overflow. So here we can see we have a couple of results from Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is like a Q&A site for developers. A little bit more mixed. It's not any kind of official documentation, but you can get a lot of great answers here. If you have a question, probably it's been like asked and answered on Stack Overflow. It can just be a little quirky, like finding the right information. So this can take a little more scrolling. You might not find exactly like the best match right away, but you can look at related and kind of click around. These would be the two sites. If you find a result from one of these two sites, Stack Overflow or MDN, pretty reputable. Sometimes you'll get blog posts that are good as well, but as a go-to, I would look for one of these two answers. So get used to kind of jumping to Google as a first stop and seeing what it gets you. Okay, let's go on to our topic for today, which is if else. Actually, I just kept sharing my screen. Okay. So today we're going to talk about if-else statements. I think most of this is going to be self-explanatory, so I want to maximize the time you guys have for pairing, but want to just go over a little bit of if-else quickly and then one other topic. So let's start with a terminal. Let's see, I'll make a new directory. What is it, day 3? So if else is where we're going to start using control flow. If I declare a variable, actually, let's do this. That's good. Meant to be in this file. So they're going to declare this variable test case. I'm going to assign it to the value of 7. Here I can start using control flow to have my program behave in certain ways depending on the information I give it. So the syntax is starting with an if statement and parentheses. Inside these parentheses, I'm going to put an expression that's going to be evaluated. It's going to evaluate to either true or false. I can put just as Boolean, which would always get evaluated. But more likely, I'm going to use like a mathematical or a logical operator to decide to set up this condition. So here I might say if test case is greater than 10, I'll start at have opening, closing brackets. If this condition is met, it's kind of like the gatekeeper to entering these brackets where there's actual code that's going to be executed. So if test case is greater than 10, let's say console.log. That's a big number. And we'll actually log the actual number. I can chain these together by saying else if, which also needs an expression to be evaluated. Test case is equal to, let's say, 7. Finally, I can end it with an else, which is going to be executed if no other previous condition has been met. So as soon as I meet one of these conditions, if I jump into this if block, I won't execute an else if or an else. I'll just be done with this if block. But else is a catch-all. If I haven't met this condition and I haven't met this condition, else doesn't have a condition. It doesn't get one of these. It just is gonna like do the rest of the work. Okay. Number did you pick? So I'll save that file, run my build system, and I can see that I got 7 is a lucky number. So questions on that? I mean, at least one question before we move on.
When you put console log, that's a big number, and then comma test case, why do you do that? Why the test case?
So let me do it here, since this is the case that we end up getting. You can use console log, comma separated, and it will print out anything else that you put here. So as opposed to having to write multiple console log statements, like having to come back down here and say console log test case, right? Because maybe I want to know what the test case is that I just passed. You can comma separate things, but you can see in this node build system, it's not really going to define that they're separate, right? It's going to print them all on the same line. Versus when I have these on a new line, the semicolon is like an end of a statement and tells the interpreter like, hey, move on, which to this node build system means start printing on a new line. But it is kind of a shortcut and nice because I could type something like this in here. Or here, actually, this would fit perfectly right there. What number did you pick? I'll make this 4. Oops. Yeah, didn't like that comma right there. So you can say, what number did you pick? And it tells us you picked the number 4. Awesome. Any other questions?
For the else if statement that you wrote, is it preferred to write the 3 equal sign to mean exactly 7 or the 2 equal sign?
Julmar, awesome question, and a really good segue into the next topic that we're going to talk about here. We'll just jump into that. So if I say this, what is going to get printed to the console, ignoring all of this?
Both times true.
Right, they're both true. What if I did this?
The first is true, the second is false.
And Ben, why is that? What's happening?
In the first one, it's called casting, and I think it's just in JavaScript. It transforms the string with number 5 to a number, and then compares it. And when you say use 3 equals, then you say strictly equal. So that means no casting allowed. And so it has to be the same type and has to have the same value.
Great explanation. So Ben used the word casting. We also use the word type coercion. So when we just use a double equal, JavaScript does have this kind of quirky thing where it is going to type coerce. So we know this is of the type number and this is of the type string. But JavaScript has these complicated rules for type coercion as to which is going to coerce into what. If it's going to turn this number value basically into a string when it compares it to a second string value or vice versa. And mostly we don't want to do that unless we are intentionally wanting JavaScript to do type coercion and allow it to say, oh yeah, your number is equal to a string. What we want to do is make sure that our values are equal not just in value, but in type. So we want to make sure that this is checking to make sure that it's both a number, matches of number, and matches with value. Typecasting, type coercion. Yeah, exactly. So as you get more, use JavaScript more, there are times where you actually want to leverage this power of type coercion, where you can even check things like saying any string it would actually do some type coercion there for you. But for right now, we want to use the triple equals and use strict equality to make sure that what we're comparing is equal in both type and value. Kind of complicated to wrap your head around, but any questions there?
I know you just explained type coercion, but is there also a way where I can say, where I can convert the string to an integer, for example? Is there a method or a function for that?
There is. You can convert the type of things by like, oops. This would convert to, I'm sure it has to be capitalized. Actually, I wonder if I just console log this. Oops. You see it gave us this number 5. Let's see, console versus just console logging. Actually, that doesn't show up very much. That I probably have to do it in Chrome to. But anyway, you can change the type of something by pushing it, by telling it to convert to a number, or there's a toString method. And those are things you can also just quickly do like an MDN search and see what exact syntax that they want. But just make sure you don't unintentionally use a double equals when you really want strict equality. So for now, just stick with the triple equals. And then as you explore further, you'll probably run into cases where people are explaining why to use a double equals, why we want to leverage type coercion. And then you'll kind of have it in the back of your mind of when you want to pull that out of your bag of tricks.
Okay, thank you.
See, one last thing I wanted to cover here. there's a prompt in today's exercises. Okay, down here. We're asking for user input. It's kind of asking you to develop a form. The only way I've seen this exercise successfully completed is using things that aren't covered in the curriculum yet, that we're gonna actually cover like early next week or late this week, using functions. So instead of, I'm not sure exactly what they're getting after. I've asked the other instructors as well if they've seen or found a workaround that doesn't involve something more complex than what we've already covered, and I haven't gotten any answers back. So instead of using an input here, use a prompt to get the user's input and display it on the page. The main point of this is just using the control flow and showing different things on the screen. So utilizing prompts as opposed to building a form is going to work just fine for us. I want to make sure you guys get down here to like this logical ternary pseudocode stuff. So any questions before we jump into pairing?
At which time do we meet again?
We will meet up today. We'll see how it's going in your groups. It'll be either 11:30, probably 11:45, because today we actually just have a Q&A planned.
Okay.
So make sure you go to the whiteboard, you find out who your new partner is, you guys set up a Google Hangout together, and then don't forget to paste your Google Hangout on the whiteboard so that Zan and I can find you.